Today we're going to learn how to use wet on wet technique with watercolors. In addition to your watercolors and your half cup of water, you will also need a sponge. Get the sponge wet and then squeeze it out so that it's not dripping too much water. Then you'll spread it around your paper to get the paper wet. This is the first part of our wet on wet technique. So you're working on a wet paper with wet watercolors. Remember, when you're using your watercolors, you want to use a lot of water and kind of swirl and twirl that brush very gently on top of the watercolor. This will make the pigment of the watercolor or the paint wet. So now we're putting wet paint onto our wet paper. You'll notice that those colors are going to kind of start to spread out and mix together when you put them next to each other. I'm using just a little dots in the side of my brush so that I'm controlling where I'm putting that paint. Slowly, very slowly, that paint is spreading out. So now we'll zoom in and you can really see that watercolor blend together. If your paper is not wet enough, you can go ahead and get your sponge again. Really make sure that you're squeezing it out, and then you can wet the area of your paper where you want that paint to be. So I just put new water on my paper to make the paper wet, and now I can blend those watercolors a little bit better. So I'm putting more water on there. Instead of just making dots, you could also make lines, and you'll notice that that paint starts to spread out, almost looking like fireworks. So play around with using just the tip of your brush and also, pressing down and making thicker lines. Be in control of where your paint is going to be put down, and then let it be out of control with where the water is going to push it. In areas where that paper is dry, I've added a few lines in the background or these dots. So you could do that after your paper has kind of dried. Go back and fill in those white areas with some designs. If your paper is really wet, you could use a paper towel to kind of soak up some of that water. And then you will want to leave your wet on wet paper to dry on a flat surface.